Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the new AirMeet platform where we're going to run our webinars in 2021. Excited to have you here. I know you're all just getting into the content space here. As you can see, the new platform is set up to allow networking when we have our events so you can all see each other, and helps holds up information for who you are, and you can direct message each other if you know each other or want to reconnect from prior events. So enjoy. Thanks for all the claps there, guys. I haven't even done anything, but thank you. As far as if you haven't met me before, my name is Casey Clark. I am the CEO and co-founder of Cultivate Advisors. Would love to meet you in a future event, maybe in person again if that ever becomes a reality. But thank you so much for taking the time today to join one of our virtual webinars where we'll try to bring as much engaging content as we can to help business owners. Why are we here, right? The purpose of this content is we want to help you understand the value of having a formal trending process, and then how to lead your employees, if desired, in a trending process, and how to connect that all back to accountability is what my outcome is for you today. And I've got some really great systems, but we're also going to hear from both Tina and Jeff, two members of the Cultivate team. They're going to be sharing some insights as well as we break into a panel, and we'll have some Q&A at the time at the end. So we're going to start with what is a trend. I'll then move into how do you do your financial business trend, not a financial business plan, very different. And then how to lead executive trends will kind of be version 103 per se. We'll do some takeaways. I'll give a couple quick updates about the community, and away we go into questions. So thanks everybody for joining us. So let's just dive right in. Let's talk about what is a trend. Why is a trend important to your business? I mean, let me simplify it for you. A trend is a business plan, recalibration meeting to trend your year-end macro objectives that lay out clear micro metrics in action. All right, what the heck does that mean, Casey? Let's break it down slowly. You have this business plan you've built prior to the year, hopefully. If not, start there. Go get that built. But you've got your business plan. It's about giving yourself permission or your employees permission to take the time to recalibrate and have a specific business planning meeting. Not your weekly accountability meetings, not whatever other types of team meetings you have. This is a specific meeting where you're running the analysis to understand where are you at on plan to the macro and what needs to change or shift in the micro. My belief is that business plans should not be created to then just come back a year later. They should be created to be recut every month. It's just a lot easier to do it, obviously, when you've already got it pre-built for the year, because you're just making quick shifts. If you think about last year, when the pandemic hit, if that affected your business, you probably needed to go recut your plan. So that was a very aggressive time of when you needed to do that. But even when you don't have those types of environments, keeping an eye on that objective is super important. So before I get into some of my content, I want to run a quick poll. I want to know, do you currently run a financial trend each month for your business? And you can just jump into chat, like, do you currently run a financial trend each month for your business? Give me a thumbs up or jump into chat and let me know, is that something that you're doing? Because it's important to really understand, is this valuable? Will this actually work for you? And it looks like some people are saying yes. Joey, thanks. You already jumped in, said, no, you don't, but you do see the value of understanding it. Good. You're in the right spot if that's true. Well, if you answered no, the next question for you to answer to yourself is, why haven't you started trending meetings in your business? Why not? What is it that's held you back? And write that down, and I encourage you to share that with your advisor and slow that down with them to figure out what needs to shift to be able to run that trend. If you said yes, just again, reflect for just a moment. We're all checking in as we get into the content today. What do you find and actually the value in actually doing the trend? What is it, the value that you get? And obviously, feel free to share anything you're thinking about in the chat. People always love to learn, peer-to-peer. But those are the questions I would ask. So again, if you don't do them, why haven't you started? Bring that answer to your advisor. If you are, what value are you finding in these? And make sure you're still getting the level of value that you need. Because a trend is all about course correction. That's really what it is, right? There's some people that operate more macro. I've set my annual goal, now I'll work blindly towards it. I don't think that's the right strategy. There's also the micro approach. People are like, what do I need to get done this week? How do I get it done? What do I have to get done next week? And what I find is that a lot of entrepreneurs can put their heads down and forget about the macro because they're too deep in the micro. But I also see people that they're too far on the macro and they never get into enough detail. What I find is that doing trends, it allows you to really take that strategic approach where you're going to hit both the macro and the micro. It allows you to keep that clear macro focus, but allows you to shift the path that you're going to take to get to that focus. Because there's no way you're going to, call the year exact. It's just not going to happen. You're going to have to shift. You're going to take different paths to get to the same end goal. And by having that meeting that you're constantly working towards that end goal, it allows you to bring that focus. And for me, when I run these trends, what I find is it allows me to leave with confidence and clarity is the two things that I'm always feeling, and it prioritizes me. I often get done with trend meetings and I end up canceling a bunch of meetings in my calendar, or I end up saying, wow, I was really getting off pace there. I don't know what it is. It's like I get going in my business. And I'm sure a lot of you feel that way. And when you work with your advisors, I'm sure you come out of those meetings going, why was I over here? I need to be on this if I'm going to get to these objectives. And that's where there's value when you approach the trending. So you're now maybe more clear that this is a trend that's happening. You're recurring most likely every month to look at your business plan, to recut that plan in pursuit. Let's talk about your actual financial business trend. Let's slow down and get some clarity there. And as I go through this, just keep in mind, you can always ask questions by finding that questions button there on the right. And you can actually vote for those questions as well. And as they get to the top, we will have some Q&A time with not only me, but the panelists I'm going to bring forward here in just a little bit. So when you think about your financial business trend, I love this quote by Henry Ford. Businesses must be run for profit, else it will die. But when anyone tries to run a business solely for profit, then also the business must die, for it no longer has a reason for existence. There has to be the passion and the connectivity. And so I know a lot of people, when they hear about financial trending and what we talk about, I've had some owners go, Casey, you guys don't talk a ton about the heart or the passion or how to find that. That's not what we're great at. What we want to do is focus on the things that a lot of business owners sometimes put to the side because it's not as maybe fun to go on. How many of you are investing the amount of time you should be investing to know your numbers in your business ongoing, and not just hoping that the end of the year works out or hoping that the paychecks will be there? That's the value of a financial trend. And I'm going to connect a little later in this webinar how to connect different types of trends. If it's a sales trend or a marketing trend, you can trend almost anything in the business. But I'm going to slow down and talk about the financials. And a lot of you have probably seen our propeller, where this is how we break down businesses very quickly in our organization. And obviously that engine is the financials. Without the engine, those blades don't exist. Nothing will exist without that engine. And that's why it's so important that the financial trend is the first trend you start. So if you're someone on this call today that says, I'm not doing them, I came to learn how to start, great. I've got some good content. We're going to talk about that. The start is start doing a financial trend. Get there first before you implement anything else. Others, you're already running trends. But if you are not doing a financial trend, please go back and I guess create that. And then you can start to build additional trend meetings with other team members. If you don't get the financials right on your trend, this is how you have an engine blowout, right? When that engine blows out and it burns out, you've got a problem. And everybody that sees this, you're probably initially thinking, oh, money running out. No, it's not just about money rolling out. That's not what I know a lot of you probably are not in a situation where you think money's just going to roll out. So why do I have to look at the numbers? I don't think you understand how smooth your business can run if you have the cash and you understand every nuance of cash within your business. It's actually about the smoothness. You don't have that turbulence with this propeller that's taking you to the next destination when your financials are clean. So that's what I want to slow down to help understand why this is so important. You don't want to just hope for luck. You want to invest that time in the financials to trend. And so, 101 here on the skill docs and systems required, I'm not going to have time to go through all of these things, but what I'm getting ready to cover, and I'm going to bring up Tina here in a little bit, when I do that, some of this may not make sense if you don't have these things in place. So I just want to get us all to the same level quickly. And I would ask that if there's anything I review here that you don't have in place, reach out to your advisor, make this a note, get this on your roadmap with your advisor, because you'd want to get these in place before you can start a financial trend. The first one is financial acumen. You need to understand revenue minus COGS equals gross margin minus fixed expense equals net margin. It's an equation that exists in every business. If you don't have a financial acumen background on this, just to be able to understand what this looks like and how to read it, let's get that cleared up first. On the product or service size, if you don't know why you charge what you charge and what your direct costs are and what your margin is on the smallest widget that you either service or of the product that you produce, please make sure you have that figured out, because you'll need that to understand a financial trend. On the historical tracking, make sure you have a strong bookkeeper in place that's updating your books monthly and consistently at a minimum. You need to have that in place. And then future projecting, make sure you have truly built the financial plan at least 12 months in advance, month over month. And my preference would be you also have a 3-year annual pro forma that just shows 3 columns of what you're hoping to do in the next 3 years. Again, those are all important to connect back why you need to solve what you need to solve in the trend. And we've covered some of these things in prior webinars, which you can find in the back of the portal underneath the CEO webinar course. The last one is you just need a system to be able to take the historic tracking and place it for plan versus actual on your future projection. You need a way to connect those 2 dots. My preferred way is just to have the bookkeeper help actually put it on the trend for you and train your bookkeeper how to do that. But if not, either someone in your team or yourself, and I'll cover a tip on that here on this next slide. Utilize your partners to do that. When you're building that system, if you're the one doing all the trend work, that can take a lot of your time as an owner. That may not be the best use of your time when you think about what you're worth as you grow the organization. So look for your opportunities to have your team either data input or have your bookkeeper put the numbers into your trend. Or again, work with your advisor even. See if they can be your trend collaborator and you have to walk through the trend with them. It's always helpful when someone else helps you run your trend. So keep that in mind, trying to find someone else. My last kind of skill hack, and then I'm going to bring Tina up here, is plan versus actual. The pro tip around that is I really love using Google Sheets. A lot of people always ask me, how do you track goal versus actual? It gets complicated. I actually just make the plan and then I just override the plan with what actually happened and keep recutting it. And I use then version history in Google Sheets where I can go back and based on what date, what was I trending? And I find that to be the best strategy for me to never lose sight of what my learning was around trending. So quick skill hack before I bring in the expert. Tina, can you make your way to the stage here? I want to bring her on. We're going to talk a little bit about trending the financials. We're going to get a little deeper now that I've set everybody up and we've got everybody going here. And so Tina, I think you're getting on it. We're just waiting for your video here and just give me the confirmation you can hear us once we get you on. There we go. We got you loud and clear?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We hear you. Thanks for joining us, Tina. So for those who don't know, Tina's been an advisor here for the last 3+ years. She's also the director of finance for Cultivate. So I figured, why don't I just bring the person who helps on the financial side of our business to the table and we can ask some questions. So Tina, I've got some questions here for you today that I sent over. Thanks for the preparation on this. I want to just start, what is your background with trending? Tina, why are we talking about this with you? What's your past background with this?
Too many years that I want to share because that'll age me, but really it's been the last 20 years of running my own businesses. And to be fair, when I thought back to this question, I wasn't great at trending when I first started my business. And it wasn't until years in when I realized I was slowly growing, but never hitting my numbers and didn't know why, that I really taught myself how to do the trending and figure out the deep dive of why I'm not hitting these random numbers that I picked out of the sky, and what I could do about it. And when I started to do that and saw my business grow and saw the profitability, that's when it became just almost an addiction of like, what can I do and how much can I deep dive into this? And, fast forward all these years and being an advisor and helping my clients do that has just been a passion because I saw firsthand how much that makes a difference when you actually pay attention to your numbers. And you don't have to be a numbers person to do that. And then, like you said, now managing even Cultivate financials.
Right. Well, I think a lot of people have experienced that. I know some people said they have done trends, and I bet there's people shaking their heads like, oh yeah, I didn't do that for a little while. And then at some point I made the jump and I committed. And then once I did it, I got addicted. I know that happened for me in my prior story, and I've shared that in some past webinars as well. Well, I want to dive into some really important content. I think it's going to help everybody. I want to understand, how much time do you think it should take to trend, right? Like, what do you recommend? How much time this should take to run a financial trend? So some people maybe aren't doing these, or maybe they're spending too little or too much time if they're already doing them. Just would love to hear your perspective on that at a quick pace.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's funny because earlier this week someone said apologize because they were only looking at their trend monthly, which is actually the perfect place to be.
Yeah.
So it is not something where you're spending a ton of time every week trending. You can look at your financials in your QuickBooks, but really the trending, you should set aside a couple hours a month, depending on the size of your business and the volume, and if you have leaders or not. And we'll get into that, how to do that. But it really should be one of those things that you're setting aside time monthly and you're treating it like something you have to do, just like payroll has to be done or some of those other things. So monthly. And then once you have your budget or forecast for the year, that's really what takes, the bulk of the time. But then it should just be really looking at your actuals compared to that and doing that whole trending. It's really the most important meeting that you can have in a month, most impactful.
I would agree. So what I heard was monthly cadence is the perfect place, because anything more than that, for most businesses, you're going to get way too far in the details. Just focus on running your business. And then when you come back and you recalibrate and you reset, it sounds like you're saying, hey, if you're using your team properly, this could take a couple hours. This doesn't have to be this huge commitment. But what I love that you said is you gotta do it. And I always think about large enterprise companies and why do they do what they do, right? Why do the accounting teams of these large companies have to deliver books to the shareholder or the board, right, every month? And so I just thought of it that way. That's how I always I have to do this because I'm going to have to provide this information. Even if you don't, just pretend you do because you run your awesome, amazing, huge empire you've built, right? I mean, that could sometimes just be the energy or the motivation you need to get over the ledge. So I like that. A lot of people, though, maybe going I don't see how to get this down to just a couple hours. Do you have any just quick skill hacks or just one or two things you could share in regards to just how do you get the time down? I'm sure there's some people that feel like it takes them a lot of time to do this if they're already doing them. So again, just kind of quick answers. I want to get into some more meaty content here in a moment.
Yeah, sure. I think it's as simple as it's in your own head, right? Making sure that this is a priority. So schedule it like something else, like those other things that you have to do. If you have to do payroll, it is on your calendar. It is usually that's somewhere between the 7th and 10th day of the month because your number should be in for your actuals from the month before. And you just have to prioritize it. You can use QuickBooks from the budgeting feature, which a lot of people don't know about. That is definitely helpful. Put your goal in there and then you can run some simple reports on what your actual is compared to that. There's other systems proactive versus reactive for things like expenses, like one of the things we're doing at Cultivate. Just looking for streamlining some of those systems.
Yeah, so Divvy is a great expense platform that you can use where it gives budgets and your people can't spend outside those budgets. So it's a proactive expense account versus a reactive, set up the expenses. You mentioned the budgeting tool on QuickBooks, great tool. Plug your budgets in once you set the plan. It'll help you do the trend for you. It doesn't have to be so manual, right? So hopefully these are some of the ways that help people get the time down. Is it only financials that you're trending? Like when you run a financial trending meeting as the owner, is it only financials you're looking at? Are you looking at anything else?
Well, it starts there, but it should not stop there. So you're looking at what you did compared to where you said you needed to be on that forecast, and then you're diving into that. And that should, whether it was on a positive side or on a negative side, that should lead you to the other propellers that we have, right? So if marketing expense was really high, we need to dive into that and look into that. On the contrary, if revenue was way above what we thought it was going to be, that's also something that we want to dive into and see what's working and then make a plan to say hey, let's dive into this, figure it out, and keep doing that. So it's not just the negative that we're off, but also all of the positive pieces of that, and then dive into all those other areas of the business.
Tina, I'm glad you talk about that because I think a lot of people don't always fully understand owners, what they're doing in their financial trend. It's great, I ran the numbers, I recalibrated my plan. It's actually to show you your root issues, right? When you understand your root issue, you're able then to understand what to go focus on. So what I really like that you're saying is you take that root and then you go work on the next steps of whatever that might be to trend further, if it be sales or whatever the item might be. So I really love that you slowed that down. Because I think people struggle with that, and don't get lost, right? Spending time on why is my cable bill $20 more this month? Like, it's not a good use of a CEO's time. Like, you need to focus in on the bigger picture priorities of trending. If there's a budget way off, it's going to crush your profit, sure. But something small, move past the minutia, focus on the macro objectives.
Absolutely.
So how do you balance being conservative versus optimistic, right? You get into this trend, and what I always find is when they recut the plan, I used to do this too until it was just like something I had to train myself down to. But I find people are either one or two sides. They're just really conservative, like, I don't want to commit anything, like it's probably going to be a bad day, and then like they're not really looking at the business clearly. Other times they'll recut the trend and they'll be like insanely optimistic. It's like, although I've missed the last 6 months, I'm going to miraculously throw a Hail Mary and we're going to get there. And it's going to happen. So what's your perspective? How do you lead yourself through that conservative or optimistic mindset when you're trending? Any tips for that?
Yeah, I think, I'm smiling because that is 50% of people are one way and 50% I think are the other, where I have to crush my goal, and other are really hard on themselves if they don't hit that goal that they set. So I think first and foremost, like, know where you land on that. So set your forecast according to that. But I think the thing that works the best is if you're like that and you feel like you're going to be one way or the other, create two. So create your must-have, like almost not necessarily a worst-case scenario, but this is what I have to hit, and then your big, hairy, audacious goal, or your stretch goal, and then you shoot for the middle. So and especially if you have teams, you want to make sure that you're reviewing that, preferably the stretch goal. You don't want to make it. You want to have a performance culture. So you want to be able to share that realistic goals that push your team to what really makes sense for your business. But creating two is something that a lot of people do.
I love that. We can just duplicate, right? Now with Google Sheets or Excel, just duplicate it once you've built it, and then kind of recut a different way. But by forcing yourself, what's the worst day and then what's the best day? We talked about that when we business plan, right? Same theme. You can do that throughout as you continue to trend. Tina, we're running out of time, and I want to make sure we get to kind of the next level of trending here. But I really appreciate the insights. Any other pro tips or best practices that you would offer on your way out before I bring you back for Q&A at the end today?
Yeah, I think, think about those systems that can make your life easier on this process. The one thing that I see a lot is people don't understand the trend. So it's not just you were above this month and below the next month, but how is that accumulated throughout the year? And then really when you're looking at, if you're doing a calendar year or a fiscal year forecast, you need to start early. So early September seems ridiculous, but really that's when you need to start trending or planning, and then bringing in your team if you have those. Otherwise, you can do a 12-month trailing where you're always adding that 12th month every month. So I like that format for a lot of businesses as well.
No, I love that. Sometimes it can be a pain to do that big annual planning. So why don't you just keep planning a month when you do the trend? Just go one more month out. That's a great little pro tip there. Thanks for sharing that. Well, Tina, thanks so much. I'll let you bail off the video, and we'll bring you back here when we get to our Q&A at the end. So if anybody has any questions for Tina, stick around. We're going to have some Q&A time if there's something specific you want. I saw one or two comments go in there that look like questions. Make sure you navigate to that questions tab. You can actually put in your questions, and then people can vote on the top questions. So, all right, let me go ahead and get my screen shared here. All right, we'll take it back. Give me 1 second to get this back up. Sorry about that. All right, and we should. All right, looks like we're live now with the screen. So Tina helped us understand the value of a financial trend, and we slowed down and talked about some best practices. And again, if you're not doing a financial trend, maybe you don't have some of those preliminary things set up that we walked through, get on the phone with your advisor, make this a part of the next meeting, and ask about this, because I believe this is one of the most important meetings that need to be running. And I know there's a lot of great things to work on, within your organization and with your advisor. But if you don't have this going, this is what dictates what you should be working on. And I think a lot of people try to lead it just from the business plan versus these monthly trends. I want to go to maybe that next level. There's a lot of folks on here that are doing trending. You have team members or executives that you've thought about leading trends with them, and what would be the value to bring this down into your organization versus just for yourself. And that's a great idea. That's something that absolutely helps you run the business. And I thought I'd have some fun and just share something I've heard a lot of in my past experience, advising clients, and even in my own experience, I've been caught on this. And I thought I'd just share it with you. It's a classic, into 2019. Okay, could you build a plan to achieve X in 2020, please? My employee says, well, here's my plan. What do you think? I go, I love it. All right, tweak that, let's go. The employee leaves, super bought in. I'm going to go crush this. We get into 2020. We jump all the way to, back to December in 2020. And hey, why are you going to miss in 2020? The employee's like, what are you talking about? I've been missing all year. Like, there's tons of factors. It's a loaded question. Well, what about the plan? The plan you built? What plan are you referring to? Who has experienced this? I know I have absolutely experienced this as an owner. And if you haven't experienced this, maybe you haven't, you've always stayed with the plans, but I can't tell you how many times I've seen a plan made and then we fall off and we don't come back to it. And then there's that awkward conversation like, well, no bonus, I can't give you a raise, I don't have enough money, right? And it's just that weird environment as owners I think we get ourselves into sometimes. Adding a trend is really helpful. When you help build a plan, if you tell anybody to build a plan, there's probably a shot you could do a trending meeting with them. Just to oversimplify this for you. If you ask them to build a plan, you probably could have them do a trending meeting with you. And that's a great way. A lot of you probably have a desire to work your way out of the business or to work less hours. Growth doesn't have to be revenue and profit. Growth can also be the ease of the business, right? That's why I talked about how clean that propeller moves. I've taken owners and helped them just do phenomenal trending meetings with some of their employees, and they were able to cut out half as many touch points or meetings that they have with their employees because the alignment to the vision in the macro and connecting the micro action steps for that month became so clear and so focused without distraction of being in the weeds of the business that on the other side, they had higher buy-in, and I was able to actually lead with less time, therefore able to scale and move myself out of the business. So that's my cry of why I think you should try to incorporate financial trends or other types of trends on any other metric with your team members. And I'm going to walk you through how to do it. And then I'm going to bring in Jeff to share some best practices because he's done a lot of trends. He's done more trends than even I have. So let's get in and let's talk about how to get this set up. And again, not everybody needs to do this, right? If you haven't set yourself up to do your own financial trend, just make that the goal. But if you're already doing some financial trends, this is a great next step to go after here. So when you set up these trends, who are you going to do them with? Again, I just encourage you to write that down. Who comes to mind? List those 2 or 3 folks, 4 or 5, whatever it is. And these are individuals, again, if you've asked them to make a plan, you're going to want to trend off of it. This could be a sales rep. This could be somebody leading your marketing. This could be an executive overseeing people. The whole point is you're connecting your vision and your macro into their macro to then go down to the micro action. Now what? With each of those people, you don't need them to trend the whole business. What are the few metrics you're going to trend them on? I'll give you a hint. It's probably the metrics you ran the business plan on. And then lastly is when. When do I need to do this? Is this monthly? Is this quarterly? How much will change between those periods of why there will be value in terms of what cadence I decide to run with this individual? And then do you need 30 minutes, 60 minutes, or 90 minutes? If you don't know, start your first one as 90 minutes and then shrink it when you realize there's not a lot to talk about. Start by just getting the who, what, when, communicate that out to your team, and get it scheduled. Now, once you get it scheduled, I'm going to walk you through a quick process, and then again, I'm going to bring on Jeff to get some best practices. The first step of the trend process is the preparation, and then I'm going to walk through the meeting, and there's 3 steps that you follow to run the meeting. So definitely take notes, and don't be afraid to use that screen capture tool to grab some of these slides, because I'm going to give you the step-by-step process here that you can take into those trend meetings with your folks. And again, reminder, any process I ever teach, we always try to design it where you can actually just take the process and just share it with your employees. Let them know this is what we're going to do. You don't have to be, some wizard and have this all in your head. So make this really simple for yourself. Let's start with the preparation. The biggest tip I can give you is you have to be very clear up front what you need from them. to make these trend meetings go well. And these are the items I would expect if I were in your shoes leading a trend with somebody on my team. I would want them to update the actuals over whatever plan. It needs to be, every data point needs to be actually updated over the plan. I then want them to recalibrate the plan. I need them to rebuild that plan and recut it based on what they're seeing. And look, there's less recalibration usually in the beginning of the year, and then more recalibration in the middle of the year, and then less recalibration at the end of the year. That's generally what you're going to see is that bell curve. Why? We don't have enough data at the beginning of the year to recalibrate. Middle of the year, we have a lot more data. Oh boy, we got to make a bunch of decisions. And then towards the end of the year, you're out of time. How much can you really recalibrate, right? So it allows them to see that. That will force them to understand, and themselves will be held accountable. They'll naturally see, like, how am I going to hit this? Me missing last month, that really killed me. Great. Intrinsically, they've identified that versus you having to tell them that. Much better approach. The next piece of prep you're going to ask is you want them to really trend out and communicate what will they achieve. And you have to say, hey, look, I don't want any sandbags, and I don't want any Hail Marys. I don't want anybody to like lower the numbers, be too conservative. I don't want you to be too optimistic. Bring me truly what you think you will achieve. And then write out an action plan. What do you need to shift? What do you have to do differently because of what you've seen? I need you to do the analysis. Don't just plug the numbers in and come to me and make me do all the work for you. If you're going to run a trend, I need you to run the ownership with me on this. And I want to read that action plan before we get into a conversation so I can see your analysis before I ever even look at my analysis. And then you need to review the updates. You need to review what they did prior to going in and having that trend. So that prep is super, super important to slow that down. Now, assuming the prep is done, there's these 3 simple steps you do in this meeting. The first one is micro data review. Here's my tips. Take notes and just have clarifying questions ready in the preparation. So that way, when you hit this first section, you're just asking questions. You're just trying to get clarification. What you're going to find is people are going to have the wrong data, or they're looking at something incorrectly, or whatever it might be. Don't say you're wrong. Don't do that. Just say, hey, how'd you get that number? I had a different number. Can you walk me through where you got that from? It's a collaboration. So don't try to prove them wrong. Just confirm and collaborate and ensure you both are agreed on the data, that of which the actual data that came out. Step 1. Step 2. Now you're going to walk through the plan versus actual validation. And I have kind of a 5-prong approach I take. This is a great place to grab a screenshot. First step is to confirm. I just confirm with them. This is where we're at on the macro, meaning it might be a profit goal, it might be a sales revenue target. Again, depending on what the major KPI that everything rolls up to for that individual, I'm confirming with them on where the macro is. We're aligned. This is what you're saying, right? Yes, that's what I'm saying. Now I know they're telling me, yes, I'm going to miss, or yes, I'm going to hit, or I'm going to overhit by what, underhit by what. Discuss what shifts take place. What shifts did you make? I saw this. What else did you shift to get to this point? Identify any barriers, gaps, or risks that you see. Just, hey, do you think this could be a gap? Do you think this could be a risk? Again, forms of questions are better in a trend. You want them to keep the ownership. And then I just like to ask any other open-ended questions I need to understand. I also ask if they have any questions about when they did their analysis, if there's anything that was confusing. I just want to then validate, hey, do we both have our questions answered? Are we clear? And have they validated what action they're going to take to move the actuals? Because now it's just feedback time. I get to, again, my tip is this is where you're going to actually provide feedback. So think of it as like I'm reviewing the data, I'm reviewing their plan and the objectives going forward, and now I'm going to give them my feedback. All the other times we're just asking questions, letting them intrinsically work through their own mindset. And I want to pick the 1 or 2 most important routes. So less is more. I want to be positive, and if I'm going to give anything negative, I want to be constructive. So often we miss the opportunity to share, right? We don't forget to share, like, hey, how did you overhit this month by 10%? What did you do? How can you redo that again? It's so easy for us to give that constructive feedback. I fall in that same fault many times over. It's very easy to do. And if you are going to share ideas or you're going to share options to help them solve what they're looking for, don't pick the direction. Give them options and allow them to pick it, because the tip is this. If it's their plan, they get to trend it. If it's your plan, they don't get to trend it. You get to pick the goal, not the path. They get to create the path. And if you don't feel comfortable with them choosing the path, you have the wrong person in the role and you need to provide additional training. That's the process. And if you follow that, that can be done with any employee on any KPI. My quick skill hacks before I bring up Jeff. So Jeff, get ready. You're coming on here in just a second. If it is financial based, some of you are going to start to have maybe, P&L, they call it P&L responsibility. You hear that a lot. If you're going to give people P&Ls and try to break up your P&Ls, you're just going to want to use the classes function on any of the accounting platforms. It's the same language. Use the classes platform so you can break out, and as you see, just kind of a nice example down here, you can just kind of see each section of the business laid out of whoever might be overseeing that. That way you don't have, it's way easier. The accounting system will break out the P&L for you by just assigning a class to every transaction. And if you're trying to figure out a way to roll up all of your trends, if you're in that level of complexity, these are usually businesses that have an established exec team. If you're at that level, I love import range. Import range is an equation you can use on Google where you can pull a cell, a value of a cell out of another Google sheet and into a different Google sheet. So you can just quickly pull them all in and do a roll up, and you can see a macro view. So if you're trying to get there, quick skill hack that I've learned over the years that's really helped me. So with that, let's bring Jeff up to the table here. Jeff, jump in here. Great to see you there, Jeff.
Here I am.
Thanks for joining us. We got your audio.
Yes.
Jeff, what's your background? Why did I choose to bring you in besides being a VP of the West here for Cultivate? But what's your background with trends?
Well, I appreciate the honor of saying I've probably done more trends than you, and it got me thinking, well, how many trends have I done? I mean, it has been probably about 23 years of trending on a monthly basis. So do the quick math. That's maybe 250 or so.
Just
trends.
For you. Just yes. For you, though. Not even with all your teams that you've led over the years.
Working with others as well. So
you might know something about trends.
Yeah, I've done a few.
You might know something. Well, here's my question. Like whenever I try to bring something down to my team, I know something I struggle personally with sometimes is like how simple or how complex it comes off. And I would just love to hear your perspective. Like with folks that are trying to get this going with teams, how simple or how complex should this be?
Yeah. I mean, well, one thing that comes to my mind is just the value of this when we think of being proactive versus reactive. So even if you're doing, I mean, you have a great model set up. That's what we follow at Cultivate. But even if you don't do it well, it's still going to have great value and it's still going to be proactive to help the business. Now, before my days at Cultivate, the last company I was with, a partner, it was a $200 million revenue pie that I was responsible for. And the trends that we looked at was revenue, royalty, and travel. Like really simple. Like a $200 million business, and it's still an hour trend meeting once a month. So very simple.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect example to share because I think some of us we have to build all these crazy spreadsheets and all that. That's not needed. Oversimplify. It's actually about the action of them doing the prep, doing the analysis, and that's why you said if you're not great at it, that's okay. You'll get better over time. It'll still add immense value. It makes a lot of sense. So I asked this question to Tina, and I want to ask this question to you because I just think everybody struggles with this, and it's even harder when you go into your team. Mm-hmm. How the heck do you lead the balance of optimism versus being conservative in trends and actually get the accurate trends so you really get the health of the business?
Yes.
How do you do that?
Well, the trick to the trade that I use is I use kind of data, and some people are very data driven, and then I want to use the emotion and the heart, and I'll look at them both ways. So again, when you think of automating a trend, so it's like, okay, well, if I'm plus 10% on my plan revenue, and this event, expense line is down 20%, you can look at and you can trend and go, okay, well, the numbers are telling me I'm going to stay 10% up on revenue all year, and expenses are going to stay 20% down. And I'll run that. What's that scenario then look like for profitability? And then I'll run, well, what happens if I'm at where I'm at, and then I can get back on the original plan for the rest of the year? I'll run that stat. And what's that, kind of look like top and bottom line? And then I'll go through and look at those key lines and put a my call. So that's the definition I'll use as a my call and go, okay, with what I know of the business, taking out just running data, what do I think the call is? And that gives you then kind of 3 measurements to go, okay, what kind of makes sense? And I want it to be real. Like, as you said earlier, you're going to see not so much swings in the middle, a lot of swings in the middle of the year. And then at the end of the year, those swings will slow down. But I do want to see the trend go up and down. I just don't want to see someone calling, I'm going to hit plan, hit plan, hit plan. I do want to see some variance up and down. I want it to be real.
I think that's great. So take in that data, make sure you've really looked objectively, remove the heart and the mind for a moment, and then when you bring it together, then make that gut call. And you're calling that my call, and that's what you expect. And it sounds like when you're leading it, you're actually asking like, okay, what's the data say you should trend? Okay, and now what are you trending and why? That's awesome. That's a great pro tip. I'm going to steal that for my next trend call. So, I mean, the other question that I don't know if a lot of these owners are thinking about, but I deal with this a lot, so I'm going to ask this question. There's probably some people that are running some pretty advanced trends just based on the size of businesses of folks we have on the call today. This word called coverage, right? There's this word called coverage in trend where it's like, how much coverage do I want, from what their plans are to when they roll up to me, how much coverage do I want? You have any advice on that of like how to balance that?
I've been on both sides of it where I've created no coverage and it creates a crazy amount of alignment, but also a lot of stress as the driver of you being responsible for it. And then I've been in a situation where I knew my direct report was creating so much coverage that even if I missed my goal by 20%, he was still going to be okay. And that drove me crazy as well. So it's this really fine line. So if I was giving advice to my clients like I do, kind of, 10, 15% coverage is kind of, a sweet spot. Sometimes, some years you may have to be a little less, but I definitely would not encourage drivers to look and create more than a 15% coverage. I think that just becomes dysfunctional and there's not that alignment of getting in the trenches together.
Well, it's hard, right? Because you want to share the macro goal as a team that we're all working towards. And then it's like they all start talking, they add up their goals together and like, wait a minute, we're way over what our goal was. Like, whoa, like, are you misleading us? So I can see that alignment is so important. Let me shift gears. I have a question that I think will really help a lot of folks here, and that is, a lot of people on this call are probably from this going to decide to go start a trend and try this with an employee, right? And when they do that, we talk a lot in situational leadership, right? About like, you've got to make sure they've got the commitment to do it, and you've got to make sure they have the skill to do it.
Right.
How do you do that? Like, any tips you could give of, how to get the commitment and skill locked in with an employee to actually set this up?
Well, I think it's going to depend on where is their skill level, right? So if they have done this a lot in the past, well, then you may be more in a supportive or in a delegative role, like us working together, right? Like, I've done a lot of them. So you don't have to come in and be really directive with me. But if someone is coming in and they're working with a leader on their team and they've never done trending before, then they're going to have to be very directive at the beginning to give them the skill. So more, work shoulder to shoulder on the trends over time. And I find that, those I've worked with in the past, at times they'll struggle to maybe hit the deadlines or get the prep really done well. And I got to go back and check in and make sure that, okay, is it a skill issue? Do I need to help them? Do I need to show them where the data is, make it easier for them to prep? Or is it a commitment issue, right, where they're just not seeing value in doing the trend, right? So it's really having that conversation. So depending on, again, where their experience level is, start there of their skill level, and then just make sure that you're supporting them if it's starting to go off track, of digging in and finding out what the issue is.
I love one thing. I loved it all, but the thing I love the most about what you said is that idea of just go find employees, sit down for a couple hours every month, and just do it with them. Just collaboratively do a trend for a few months, and then be able to ask, hey, could you do this on your own? I think that's a great way. And classic situational leadership, right? High direction for somebody to get off the ground, but doing it with them will feel so partnered. That's great. Mm-hmm. Jeff, I'm conscious of time, and I want to have some Q&A for everybody, and I've got one or two updates. So just want to ask final question from me, and then if anybody else has other questions, find that questions tab. We'll have a few minutes for questions. Any other best practices you would like to share? I love asking that question when we bring people on. Anything else you'd like, hey, just keep this in mind?
Just get started. Like, that's the biggest thing, is just get it on the calendar, get started. If you don't even have a document created on how you're going to trend, sit down with the individual and build it together, right? Yeah. Like, the great conversations will happen, and good things. You'll be able to be proactive versus reactive. So just get going.
That's awesome. Well, very well said, Jeff. Thanks so much. You can actually stay on if you want, because I've just got a few more slides here for a couple updates, and then we're going to jump to Q&A. So for everybody, jump to that questions tab. If you have a question you want to specifically ask, that's a great place to put it. We're going to come there and answer some of those questions here in a moment. And Tina, if you want to find your way back to the stage, now would be a great time. Looking for everybody to jump in the chat and just share, what's a takeaway you grab from today? What's that one nugget you do not want to lose or forget about, and you want to be able to come back and implement that in your business, or you want to take that to your advisor And if you wouldn't mind, it helps us curate our content. Jump into chat and share what were some of those thoughts that stuck with you. Pick that one thing and throw that in the chat. That way we can light this up and help see all the great learning in case people are struggling of what their big takeaway is. As far as the client corner, just friendly reminder, reason why we do these is for you as clients to take this and bring this back to your advisor and be able to start up a conversation if this is something in your business you're excited about. So hope to see you do that. If you want to watch this again and recapture or any of our other past webinars, I mentioned earlier, there's a webinar where we walk through how to set up the financial structures. If you go to the courses when you log in and go to CEO webinars, all of our webinars over the last 3 years are sitting there. Have at it. You watch them and get skilled up in the areas that you need to get skilled. A couple just quick updates. Catapult, big announcement. If you've been to our annual conference, we went virtual for the first time last year, had a lot of fun, learned a lot, but we're moving it to 2 one-days this year. We didn't feel comfortable to have another live event this year. I know, bummer, but we want to make sure everybody's safe. We have intentions to look at that in the future to see if we can pull that off. But we're going to go to 2 one-day events this year, one in spring, one in fall. So you don't have to wait until fall again to experience Catapult. Our first one's going to be April 22nd. So mark your calendar. If you want to go ahead and get pre-registered, you can jump to the portal and sign up underneath events. But we'll definitely want to see you there. We're going to have some big speakers. We'll be making some announcements over time. And then we did our webinar in December about AccuMax. That's our new assessment tool. We've now launched where you can actually see how many assessments you have left of the 10. And we've built out a lot more information on what it means to upgrade. You can even download a sample report. So jump into the perks section when you log in and click to AccuMax, and you'll see all the information about AccuMax if that's of interest to you. And my final update before we hit Q&As, we've got some upcoming events. We got asked in the feedback after Catapult if we would start to run more consistent networking events. So all of the clients could meet each other, do business, find partners, get best practice sharing. We decided to make that a reality. You'll notice this platform when you logged into the lounge, it has the ability to jump into roundtables or jump into networking. On February 4th, we are launching our first community speed networking. Very excited to have you join us. If you want to meet if you're a B2B business, you better be there. All right? If you can meet business owners, I'll give you a hint. That's who's in our community. It's all business owners. But even if you're B2C, you'd be shocked who could refer you, and you could get additional business or get great learning. So hope to see you there. More details getting emailed out about that. And if you want to sign up, it's on the events section of the portal. And lastly, our next CEO webinar, Mr. Will McMillan, he oversees our technology for our organization. He is going to be coming in and talking about how to delegate more as an owner and how to set up automations. And rumor has it he may even show you how to set up an automation that'll save you a bunch of time. So really excited to have him join us and his panel that he'll choose. That's February 18th if you're interested in that webinar. We like to do these every month. So if you're curious how the events work, we do a speed networking event now the first Thursday of every month. And then we do a CEO webinar the third Thursday of every month. So look forward to those this year. All right, let's get to some questions. We've got only just a couple here, so not a ton, maybe a couple more will trickle in here. Again, find that questions tab. Don't put it in the chat so we can separate it here. So this first question here by Joey Vitale, any tips on ensuring that we are delegating the ownership of that recalibration where necessary and not stepping on the toes of our leadership team? Pretty loaded question. So any tips to ensure we're delegating? So Jeff, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think it really kind of folds into what we were talking about earlier, Casey, on the 4 stages of situational leadership. You're going to start directive, coaching, supporting, and then delegating. So once they're highly skilled and once they're highly committed, then yes, you should be delegating that to them. And as Casey said, as his process he walked through was more of a delegation style. You're letting them do the prep, you're asking a bunch of questions, then you're kind of giving your perspective and feedback at the beginning. So understand, if someone's highly skilled and highly committed, that's the process that you should be going through. But if they are committed to it, but don't have a lot of experience, you can't delegate it. You need to be very directive. You need to get shoulder to shoulder. So really understand where they are skill-wise and commitment-wise in this particular skill of trending before you decide how you're going to properly lead them.
No, it makes sense. Tina, is there anything you wanted to add, or should we go to the next one?
Yeah, the only thing that, in addition to what Jeff said, is really it's about that buy-in and having the right person in that leadership role.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I think, it's not always leaders that you're trending with, right? But oftentimes, if you're a small business with maybe a few sales reps, great people to trend with, or somebody managing your operations, it's a small team, it can still be great to run the trends. The two things I would remind that we already shared that brings a lot of ownership to get that buy-in is just remember, although you're collaborating with them to build the plan, it's important that they choose the numbers, that they understand and see the data, so it truly is their plan. And then just don't forget, you get to assign the goal together, but you got to let them choose the path. It's your job to influence that path, not force them to follow that path. So that would be my big tips there, Joey. Great question. Another question we got here from Riva. So she is curious, what is the plan for a process if it's not a financial or tangible numerical data point? So if it's not something data-oriented, when do those trends exist, and how would we potentially approach those? Any idea from you two on that?
It's a great question. I'm thinking like the trending that I've done has always been really kind of, data driven. I talked about wanting to bring the my call and your emotion into it and what you're seeing out in the field. So, a lot of the trending I've experienced has really been around some tangible financials.
Okay. Tina, anything else you'd add?
Yeah, my brain went to the same thing, and I've had these questions, from clients that I've worked with over the years. But I say find something that is measurable. It doesn't have to be a financial number, but it could be something measurable like client satisfaction or number of positive, reviews, or something that you can end up trending on. So I would say just dig a little bit deeper and find out why that's something important to your business, and then find how you can track that.
I for sure think that's the root. I was just, my initial thoughts when I read that, Riva, was just to slow down and say, I actually think I could get a data out of about anything you gave me at some way, even if it was just activity taken or number of hours worked on something. There's always something you could apply. So I would encourage you to go deeper. I think that's a great piece there, Tina. So I think those are the questions we got. So either we left everybody with what they needed, or they don't know what to ask. We'll take it as a compliment either way. And if it's not, make sure you share some feedback so we know, and we'll shift it up. But with that, we're going to give everybody 3 minutes back. If you would like to stay on a little longer when we kick you back to the lounge, and if you would like to jump back into some speed networking for a few minutes and meet a couple other owners, feel free. It's an option with this platform. Otherwise, have a fantastic rest of your week, and we hope to see you for the networking event in a couple weeks from now. Thanks, everybody.
Have a great week.
Bye-bye.